it is likely that any movement to physically, visibly arm and or provision such an organization may draw attention from interests or individuals who either have no understanding of the Constitution or historical precedent, or would be better served for a body of patriots to be subdued or subverted before they became a reckoning body. We must make it unquestionably evident that we have no interest, no intention to overthrow the present government, despite its evidenced disregard of its own designated limits. The primary concern of this muster, this meeting today, is to introduce those who are unfamiliar and renew the interest of those who are in the formation, restoration, and revitalization of the ultimate authority under constitutional law, the militia of the several states. I say the several states because in the beginning there were 13 independent colonies, 13 independent sovereign republics, 13 separate self-governing republics who united to break their fealty, their slavery to the British crown and the throne of King George III. In essence, they were what were known as the 3%ers. There were estimated to be approximately 3% of the population who strongly or actively supported the movement for independence. In all, a total of perhaps 1/3 of the population supported separation from the British Empire. Another third was wholly loyal to the crown and strongly opposed such separation, the Tories. And the remaining third made no evidence of their opinion, content to side with whomever came out victorious, fearful that choosing one side or the other would jeopardize their personal security, or not even having a strong enough opinion one way or the other. Our first exercise of the right of secession under natural law came in 1774, when the delegates to the Constitutional Conventions drafted and ratified their masterpiece of treason to the throne, the Declaration of Independence. Make no mistake, had those men failed, had France's powerful and capable armada under Admiral Comte de Grasse during the Battle of the Capes and the Siege of Yorktown been delayed in joining the fight, the United States would never have come to exist. Virginia would possibly still be ruled by a descendant of Lord Cornwallis to this very day. The men that fought for the colonial army under General Washington were not army regulars. They were not standing army of professional soldiers, having been instructed and trained in the art of soldiering by Napoleonic strategists. They were regular men. Men who fought in defense of their sovereignty, had determined to secure certain inalienable rights, namely life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not the guarantee of such happiness, only the right to pursue it, endowed upon them by their Creator. The Declaration continues, and I am reading verbatim because I sense that some of you may not have ever heard these words, that you may never borne witness to the truth or the magnitude of just what these souls were trying to establish for us 230 years ago. Please lend a patient ear and determine for yourselves if any of this at all sounds familiar, if any of it might be relative in a contemporary theater. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for future security. Such has been the patient suffrage of such colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent be attained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public record, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with their measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the right of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsion from within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for established judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for their tenure of offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to the jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and acknowledged and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of a trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English law in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule to these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty, perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous of ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.